Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and distinguished panelists and ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon, and this is a great privilege for us to be here. We sincerely thank the organizers for launching this very important coalition. Really it is very important and equal pay for men and women. It is not only show the development of the women, also it is show the development of the country, and this issue is that we understand about the mindset of this country. So this is very important, and nowadays we say about planet 50-50 and sustainable development goal. So everything is related with everywhere equal opportunity for men and women. And on the other hand, I want to say that not only equal pay, also the women should be get different types of facilities, because a woman is related with their child. For example, maternal leave, lactating mothers, breastfeeding corner, daycare center, those types of different support should be we give for their those women. So in this case, our government, our Prime Minister, she is a woman. You know that Prime Minister is our daughter of the Father of the Nation, Sheikh Hasina, and by the leadership of her, we are doing our best for our women, for their empowerment. Father of the Nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman ratified the ILO Convention number 111 on discrimination, co-employment and occupation, Convention 1958 on 22 June 1972. Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has ratified the Convention of Equal Remuneration for Men and Women Workers for Work of Equal Value, 1951 on 28 January 1998. Bangladesh endorsed the Beijing Platform for Action and the United Nations Millennium Development Goals 2000, Sustainable Development Goal 2015, etc. Government has taken different initiatives to reach the targets of sustainable development goals, especially the equal right of men and women. The National Women Development Policy 2011 provides for women's increased participation in the labor market, equal opportunity at the workplace, wage equality and protection. And we believe that not only in case of labor, because in our country more than 3 million women are working in government sector. And why always they are become labor? Why not they become the owner of garments? So we are giving different types of support there. As a small entrepreneurs, as a big businessman, if they need money from bank and others and different types of training, we are giving this. So salary, nowadays the salary of the government workers is decreased double from our ministry, and for promoting the women employment, efforts have been made to improve the working environment of ready-made garments and other officers, creating daycare facilities for the children of the working women. A total of 94 child daycare centers are set up for children of low-income working women. Because when their mother is working in their government sector, then increase the government's working place. But what is about their children? For this reason, we are giving special support their children by this daycare center, free education, and also working women hostels are established to ensure safe residence. As part of providing security and low-cost housing facilities to the working women, women hostel camp training centers have been built. Moreover, maternity leave has been increased from 4 to 6 months, considering the health need of working women and their children. Also, we are giving lactating mother allowance. And not only giving allowance, also we are giving training, different types of health support and training, reproductive health and others. The gender vision of the 7th five-year plan is that of establishing a country where men and women will have equal opportunities and rights, and women will be recognized as equal contributors in economic, social and political development. We successfully achieved maximum goals of NDGs and earned the reputation and global recognition for the government. We are now making efforts to fulfill the targets of Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable development would not be possible without ensuring the equal participation of women in every stage. I wish a great success of Equal Pay International Coalition, and thank you very much. Did you want to say anything here?
Well, I don't really represent the country, but I can say something.
You're on the panel, so I assumed you wanted to say
I can say something about Europe. You know, if two persons have the same job, and one is a man and one is a woman, in Europe, the woman, on average, has 16% less pay. This is something, and if you look at pensions, the difference goes up to 40%, 40%. This is hidden. Because if it wasn't so hidden, governments would have done something about it a long time. On paper, there is equal pay. In practice, there isn't. So what do you do about it? I think it's very important that we force governments to be more transparent. And also then, of course, force market forces through trade unions, through dialogue with the private sector, to be far more transparent about that. I also believe when we discover this discrepancy, we make it easier for women to protest against that, to correct it, including going to court if that is necessary with public support. Because this is urgent. You know, we can't afford to sort of put half of our brain power on the back burner. Simply not at all in economic terms. Not even talking about morality, but even in economic terms, it's not affordable. And we need to do other things too. And I want to briefly mention that. We put a proposal on the table which was highly controversial on parental leave. No longer talking about maternal leave, but parental leave. And we want men and women, or two partners in a relationship, to have an equal period of parental leave, 4 months paid, which is non-transferable. For some reason, this is the only social right in many nations. You can transfer from one person to another, straight. And I believe that if you make it non-transferable, and there's enough empirical data to support that position, you then create more opportunity for young men who want this and crave this to have another role in family life. And if you if you make this the social norm, another role in family life, which, by the way, is something that is wanted by a vast majority of young men, you recreate relationships and you recreate also the position of women in the workforce. And you thus correct also the inequalities in pay, especially long-term pay, and especially also in pensions. At the end of the day, this is about privilege. If men see, for hundreds of years, don't see privilege as privilege, but as normality, if you correct that a privilege, men feel that something's taken away from them. So what are you going to give them in return? Fatherhood, I think, is not a bad deal. And I think if you can correct that in some ways, you do more than just do something about the pay gap. You make sure you can unleash 100% of the brain power we have at our disposal in our society.
And any panelists who'd like to answer, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what role you see for the Equal Pay International Coalition in sort of reinforcing the efforts you're making nationally. What would help you and what do you expect?
Just for me to answer this, probably what would work for us in a practical way, allow me just to go, I think whatever works, there should be strong ownership at the national level. It has to be homegrown. Allow me to give a small example of something that's very close to my heart, and probably that's why I'm here. After we formed this national entity, the National Commission with the support of ILO that was done, there was more awareness, and there was the teachers who were more discriminated against. I'm just getting to your question, just making the argument. They felt that the women in the private schools have been really having a disadvantage. So they started a campaign, and why I say it has to be locally owned. In Jordan, traditionally in all schools, we take this point where you have to stand up for the teacher in respect. So what the teachers, and they're all female teachers because it was discrimination against women, they did is stand up with the teacher instead of for the teacher. So really, this had a lot of emotional resonance with everybody because it shows that we're not just respecting. And they took that, and it ended up, I don't want to make a long story short, in having the first grassroots-led collective bargaining agreement between the government, union, private sectors, and now it is obligatory for all schools to sign it. It's obligatory that the social security transfer. What I'm trying to say is, I think supporting technical assistance, because and how to do things is very important, but the priorities and how it is done. You can give examples of this, and I really like South-to-South developing countries, because sometimes in Jordan, issues of women and issues of how you address equality and equity, they have to be different than when you're addressing. The core is the same, but it depends whether you want to make social behavioral changes and values takes time. And sometimes you really have to work within the system. So the first thing is find the national priority, have grassroots leaders that they take the force and push it, and then support the government, because there's a lot of pressure on inspectors, there's a lot of pressure. So that I would say then, home ownership, grassroots movements, technical supports by ILO and others for the government, and have it partnership with and networking with everybody. I think I learned something. And keep this issue up so you feel that it's not, sometimes there's a fashion in the development world that comes and there's a fashionable world, and then in a few years it's gone. So we have to be very diligent in tracking and making sure we have 2 years goal, 5 years goal, and we all report to that. So it's not just something that goes away. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with what has been said on the importance of having a local ownership. But if I had to pinpoint one area where I think the coalition would really need to work, I would say it's awareness, which is something that the coalition is already doing, and I think we need to do more of that. We talk about the percentages of the gap, but we are not really aware. It's not an issue that is really present. When Aurelia mentioned that when she entered into the workforce, she earned 500 euros less, I think that's very visible. I think we need to speak in more concrete terms like that in order to make it visible and make it a reality. But I also think that we need to work on the awareness, not only of the disparity of the salary, but on the causes for that disparity. And I think part of the cause for the disparity is that we cannot deny that today still women have more of a responsibility at home in taking care of the children, in taking care of the elderly, in making sure that the home runs. And it's a fact that that is time that you take away from work, and then it's punished with salary, or even worse. You don't take away the time from work, you just do the double shift of the work and the home, and it's not recognized because there is like that hidden reality of women having less commitment because they have this other shift that is there, but we're not really aware. So I think we also need to work on awareness of the reality that today women still have more responsibility with family. And in that case, what Mr. Timmermans said about creating legislation and the framework to ensure for equal participation in family life, it's also part of the solution. We pushed in Panama this year paternity leave, and you wouldn't believe the discussion. It was horrible, and we ended up with 2 days.
And the government still criticized because we gave fathers 2 days to be able to be with their wives at labor and whatever. And men are missing out on raising the children, and women are carrying on their own this responsibility. I do believe in the value of this sort of privileges being shared. Because if you share the privilege, then you share the responsibility. And if you share the responsibility, women will have more possibilities at work. I think awareness of the fact that we do have a gender gap in terms of salary, awareness of the fact that we still have disparities in terms of the responsibilities of women at home and at work. And the role of international organizations in that regard is very important. I share OECD's participation as well, because it's very common to give for granted that UN Women is for women's issues, and labor organization is for anything related for labor. But OECD, I mean, organizations that are dedicated to development, I think that's the way, and I would raise that way.
But sure, I don't want to steal time from the next panel, so I think we'll need to keep the remarks quite small. We also have some delegates from the floor who will be speaking. Thank you.
I think from where I sit, the EPIC needs to handle Africa in a very different manner. And I'm saying that because I'm an African and I know what I'm talking about. I'm from a family of 11, of which 9 are girls and 2 are boys. When the boys were born, my parents were elated. When the girls kept popping up, they were saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So our 3rd is a boy, and our last is a boy. But my dad, especially, had to get used to the fact that we're there to stay. And he called all of us chaps. But this is an African problem. When you're born female, you're better off staying at home. You're born male, if they have money, it's going to go to the male for education. Straight away, the disparity begins at that stage. As we go, I'm an MP from Lusaka Central, which is the most, there's different suburbs there, the rich and the poor. When I go to the poor, the classrooms are full of boys. The girls are at home. When you go into an IT class, perhaps there are 2 girls there. So obviously, when they graduate and they're looking for a job at that stage, the girl is disadvantaged. So I think we need to look at this whole thing in a very different manner and say, how are we going to look at this equal pay for men and women in the future? We need to take a few steps back and look at what we're going to do at the very, very beginning of the education of a child, and ensure that they are on an equal footing from day one, especially in the rural areas and in the poor areas of the urban areas. Thank you.
Any other last words from panelists before we go to the floor? Yeah, you want to go ahead? Sure. Briefly, please. Thank you.
Very shortly, I want to say that really this issue is very country to country, because a developed country, their situation, and a underdeveloped country, the situation is not same. So this is very. In this case, I want to say that our respected panelist told that parental maternal leave and parental leave. That I want to say in this case, when in our country situation, our population is a densely populated country. When we are giving these types of leave, then population is increased so much. So sometimes we will be careful about this. And on the other hand, not only equal pay, the main thing is respect, honor. When we honor one person, then automatically pay will be equal. So our mindset should be changed for a men and women. Thank you.
Just very quickly, after Margaret has spoken, I think somehow feel forced to speak, to say something. Because I think the situation in the middle of Europe or in Liechtenstein is a very different one. I grew up knowing the sky is the limit. I could study what I wanted. Then it was no question that as a girl I could study. And I think my generation grew up, we can do everything and we can reach everything. But now being 40, I realized that the reality is different. So my generation needs to understand that we need to fight for something my grandmother has fighted for, and we need to redo this fight again, and we need a new generation. My generation needs to wake up and go for that fight and do something.
Mr. Franz Timmermans, any last words?
If I may just one comment on education, because I think it's a crucial point. If between boys and girls you differentiate in education from birth, by the age of 3, the difference will be so big that you can't close the gap. So that's how bad it is. So empowering women, especially in Africa, to have access to education, and then to help their girls to have access to education, and then create the normality that from birth you treat children equally in terms of education, is the only way forward. And the only way we will empower African women to have control over how many children they want to have is if they are economically independent enough to make that choice. And we can only reach that through education. So I just want to underscore that point, that it's a wider issue, that your reproductive rights are tightly linked to your economic independence. And this is something that should be understood, not just a pay gap, but also a gap in control of your very fundamental elements of your life.
Thank you very much for that. I think we have Ambassador Pierre Reynolds here from Switzerland to say a few words.
Chair. So, the Swiss Constitution and the Federal Act on Gender Equality explicitly prohibit wage discrimination and enshrine the principle of equal pay for work of equal value. Say that, we say, okay, fine, perfect. I put that in my statement. So when last year, or 2 years ago, I appointed as a head of one of my divisions, a young woman, a 35 years old woman, and then she came to my office crying, saying, I will turn down the offer because I'm getting a lower pay compared to my predecessor. And then this forced me to look into actually what was going on and realize that actually there was no excuse, there was no just a matter of views and so on, but it was really, really a difference. And of course, there was fighting. Actually, now the lady is working on as a head of division. So the first message is we can say what we want, we can patronize, but at the end, managers have to be committed themselves to, if it's necessary, to check. The legal in Switzerland, the legal framework is there. It's a matter to make this happen. This is one element. The second, of course, a country like Switzerland, where women's vote came on in 1931, you can say, okay, maybe we need to help speeding up the process. And one way is public procurements to be strict. When you do public procurements, you make sure that you only awards mandates only to companies which respect wage equality. This is something that can be done easily. I mean, easy, but it can be done. It's actually easy being done. So this is something compulsory. But how can you get companies with more than 50 employees also moving? So we developed an equal pay self-analysis tool that has been used by 2,000 companies themselves, often not fully be aware about the differences that some cases. So this is also a tool to shift a bit. And then the next step is the Parliament a new bill that then will actually ask, of course, if you want the companies with more 50 employees to regularly check whether there is still a discrimination in wages. So this is the way also we move. And of course, anything else that has been said about the role of men and women, Switzerland and Liechtenstein, I think we share quite a few of our cultural ways of going. This is for sure important. But at the end, we need also to make sure that with something big, procurements and so on, that we move on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. H.E. Kieran Cannon, Minister of State of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Ireland. You have the floor.
I want to express my support for this initiative. The number of organisations, countries, businesses and civil society organisations here this afternoon is testament to the importance of this issue. The promotion of women's economic empowerment is one of the keys to development. None of us underestimate the challenges in addressing, for example, gender pay gaps, which manifest themselves in different ways in different countries. We've heard some very personal experiences here this evening. However, the ability for women to fully realise their potential as economic actors is absolutely transformative. And the coalition of stakeholders in this coalition allows for the development of a more effective dialogue aimed at reducing the obstacles to the development of equal pay. So we are looking to develop an analogous coalition at home in Ireland as we try to address the structural obstacles we experience in achieving equal payments. And somebody mentioned earlier on the requirement of the private sector to step up to the plate and begin to work proactively in this area. Just 3 years ago now, we in the state, the government, the public sector, I suppose, led the way to a certain extent in imposing gender quotas in the selection of candidates for our general election. We imposed a requirement on all of our political parties to have a minimum of 30% of their candidates women, female participants, and if they failed to reach that 30% quota, there were significant cuts to their state funding for each individual political party. The symbolism of that was quite powerful. The parties responded very positively